Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Design Cinema. This is Feng Zhu speaking, and we are finally at episode 104. I apologize once again for the long delay between these episodes. I have just been way too busy for the past almost half a year now doing pre-production stuff that's requiring a lot of research, a lot of writing, just eating up all my time. But today's a Friday. I thought, hey, let's clear out another episode before we run for this is like almost coming April, May of 2020, and we haven't even done a single episode. So let's get 104 out. Hopefully maybe 105, 106, and so forth as well. I actually have all these episodes planned and a lot of notes written for each one of them, but I just haven't had time to actually produce them. So this episode, the reason why I could get it out is because I just shared the content of this with our own students, and you guys will see why. Because this is something I find a lot of students have a hard time with, right? Which is today's episode called Environmental Composition. I have talked about some of this stuff in the previous episodes, but today I thought let's go in depth. Since a lot of you guys seems to like the long format, the kind of studio or the classroom environment. So I'll continue doing that format, and it's also a lot easier for me to produce these episodes if it's more like just teaching. Okay, so there's no editing, I don't need to really worry about cutting anything. Let's just run it as if you guys are in a classroom. Okay, so today let's jump right in. So this episode will probably run for maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I have no idea. Let's just run with it. Let's take our time, because learning something, especially something that's very difficult, takes time. There are no shortcuts to this stuff, and there's a lot of information to get through. So let's jump into the first slide here. So I'll be using a series of little presentation slides, but I will be making notes and sketches while we go. All right. So episode 104, environmental composition. Why am I doing this, right? Because I find a lot of junior artists, including our own students, as soon as they get out the basic drawing object phase, right? Like drawing a single character, drawing a single little set, like a diorama. And now they have to move forward to placing a camera into a scene to really capture that sort of the immersive shot, right? Putting the user right into this environment. Then they have a lot of trouble with the three things that we're seeing here. Okay, let me get my notes here. They have trouble with where to place the camera, so camera position. They have a problem with finding the right level of field of view, okay, FOV. So in cameras, that'll be lenses, like a focal distance lens, like 25 mil versus a 50 mil. But since a lot of you guys play video games, maybe we use FOV, a little bit easier to understand. And the third is basic composition. So these three things, if you have some very, very entry-level understanding of how to approach it, you can actually use this formula for the rest of your career. They work well for a student, and they work well for a seasoned professional that's been in the industry for 40, 50 years, as you will see later as I show you some examples from movies and so forth. So today we'll be covering these three topics in very specific, very specific, but for basic use, okay? If you are a professional, you already know all this, and you can also experiment with a lot more variations. But today I'm gonna cover just the basics, so the starting work that you do looks professional. Because again, we teach a lot of students, and when the camera comes in and the FOV comes in, the composition comes in, it goes all over the place. Even if they draw extremely well when they're dealing with a single object, once it becomes a compositional shot, things just goes all over the place, right? So let me show you what I mean by single object drawing. Let me make sure I covered everything here, right? So these tips, again, could be used for the rest of your concept art career. You never have to stray from it. It'll still work, okay? That's the magic of the fundamentals. The design subjects, that's where difficulty comes in. That's where you have to work really hard, because that's where you get paid for the content that's in there. What I'm showing you today is the structure that goes underneath it, okay? So here are some examples from our students, right? You guys probably seen some of this stuff from our website, for example, right? So they do these earlier in their terms. So they're object locked design. So whether it's an object, a prop, a character, a creature, they're all kind of shot with this 3/4 view camera angle, right? There's 3D used here as well for the underlying structure, right? Pretty basic, because it's a very locked object, right? It looks like a room, but you can also treat it like a diorama, which is a small object. You can treat it like it's a treasure box, right? So essentially, it's very, very self-contained. So the camera use is very easy to do. Just put the camera a little bit high up, shoot this thing as if you're shooting a photo of an object on your desk. So there's not much compositional things you have to worry about. The only thing we gotta do is tell students to turn it at a 3/4 view. That means you see a little bit of the side, a little bit of front, and this view is pretty good for 3D artists to build objects off of this concept art, right? So once students move away from this, and now we have to put the camera inside the scene. For example, let's take a look at this library set, okay? So now we have some characters standing over here, and we have to shoot a camera into them. Now everything goes all over the place, right? So today's episode is talking about, okay, how do we place camera into sets like this, or even external? It doesn't have to be internal. As long as the environmental scene, what do we do with the camera? So let's jump to our first slide here. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is camera placement. All right, camera position. Let me make sure I'm the right layer here. Okay. First rule, okay, the basics, just be a tourist. So let me explain what that means. So you guys all traveled, even your neighborhood, right? Wherever you go, you want to take out your cell phone and take a photo of whatever you're seeing. Now, where would you go to take that photograph? For example, you're at the Eiffel Tower, or you're in Notre Dame, or you're in the temples, you know, wherever you're going. You generally see a cluster of tourists in a very specific spot. The reason why those tourists are there is because most likely this place was designed in a way to make tourists go to that position to get the best shot of this location, because that also helps this tourist spot. If these photos go online, they go on Facebook, they go on Google, you know, whatever they go, people are going to see that photo, go, hey, I want to go there too. So a lot of these famous places are designing specific areas for tourists to take their photos from. And these locations are ideal to showcase the subject matter. And in this case, we'll do the same exact thing. So if you're designing a castle, you're designing a sci-fi base, you're designing a cyberpunk bar, whatever it is, just pretend you are literally a tourist visiting your own set. Now, where would you go? It sounds so basic, but we will actually see students go into like a funky corner and stick the camera through 2 jars, or they'll have a giant beam in front of their shot blocking half the set. You look at this and go, you wouldn't shoot this for Facebook, you wouldn't show this for your Instagram, but why would you do it for your concept art, right? Picking very bizarre camera areas. So that's one, be a tourist. And on top of that, I think, as a tourist, you cannot fly. You don't have advanced camera equipment. You don't have cranes. You don't have all these things that cinematographers have. You just have, let's just say, a cell phone with you. Or if you have a point and click like these, a more advanced camera like these, right? So as a tourist, your camera position is actually very limited in terms of where you could move in the space and how high you could control the camera. And down here, I have those listed. You either have it at head height. You could raise the camera slightly higher above your head, that's fine, but basically it's about head height. You can have it at chest height, you can have it at waist high, you can have it at your thigh level, and you can have it pretty much on the ground. That's it, okay? So vertically speaking, you have this about 5 levels of height to deal with, and horizontally speaking is where you'll go if you're physically there, okay? So hopefully that is making sense to you. So if you have a set, just think, where would you go? So if it's a cyberpunk bar, you want to take exterior of it, what would you do? So you probably walk across the street, right, go for a little bit of an angle and take a photo of it. That's it, perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. And once you go inside, you gotta see, okay, where do I go? Is there a chair somewhere? Is there a VIP section that's a little bit higher up to get a nice shot of this club, right? You cannot fly to the ceiling. You can't put your camera into the corner where the security camera is. You can't do that, right? You're physically limited to doing that kind of stuff as a tourist. So just take a tourist shot. So the key here is to keep it simple. Okay, when students have 360-degree movement of the camera, things go everywhere. And trust me, I've seen it all. I've seen the most craziest cameras. I've seen the cameras that makes no sense. For example, here's the let's say a throne room with the king's chair in the middle, and their shot is literally half the throne is cut off, and they're showing like a random corner for no reason. So things like that show up, and they wouldn't do that if this was a physical location that they're going on vacation. They wouldn't shoot photos like that. So keep it simple, okay? So keep it at human head level or below, okay? Just memorize this. We'll be reviewing this over and over as we go forward, and I'll be repeating this over and over again, because with fundamentals, especially when we're teaching students, we have to basically repeat the same thing hundreds of times before it starts to stick in the head. So for you guys as well, if you want to practice this, you got to repeat this over and over again, okay? Now, by keeping the camera at head height, most likely the horizon line is going to be in your shot as well. So we want to keep that horizon in the shot, and I'll explain to you guys why. We want to have a clear focal point and a subject matter. Don't worry, I'll have a lot of image demonstrations of what this looks like in a second here. But basically we want to make sure that there's something you're shooting, okay? You don't want to shoot a random grass on the side of the road. That's not really a subject matter unless that's very specific to what you're doing. But if you're going to Notre Dame, you're not gonna be shooting a piece of bush that's next to a pillar, right? That's not showing off Notre Dame when that's your design. Okay. So speaking of Notre Dame, let's take a look at tourist shots and analyze them. Okay. So here on the left here, I have a few photos I just grabbed from Google of Notre Dame. So here's shot number one. Here's shot number two. Here's shot number three. Now you notice these all have something in common because I just grabbed these off of Google. These are not taken by professional photographers. They're taken most likely by tourists. So as a tourist, they already fall in line with our first rule, which is head high. Okay, I'm gonna use a red line here to draw a horizon line. So you can see I'm gonna find just somebody's head, right? So we have a woman's head right here. So let's just mark a line right through her head here. And you'll see that this goes through on average most people's heads, right? There's probably a slight incline here where the photographer is a little bit above the horizon, but on average, it's very close to people's head, right? These guys are standing on something, so they're a little bit taller. And this person here, obviously they're sitting down, so they're lower. But on average, you can see across the board here, everyone's on the same level. Why? Because this photographer is a human and they don't have access to a ladder. They cannot fly. They don't have a drone. They're taking it from head level. And this shot works perfectly well. Notre Dame is framed nicely. We see a good design of it. The only thing here is that we don't have a side view, the depth of it, and which we'll cover in shot number two. Okay. So this shot here is quite nice. We have a beautiful shot of Notre Dame, and this shot also is taken at head level because it's a tourist. So here's a fence. So an average human is about maybe here, somewhere around here. There's no humans in this shot, but I could draw a red line just to indicate that. Actually, you can see a little bit. They're right about here. Okay, so right about here, and that's where the horizon line is going to be. So if I plot the perspective here, the perspective horizon is going to hit that red line. Okay, now this is going to assume that you guys know your perspective, because with with this type of work, drawing environments, perspective is very important. And I'll get to that once we get to the FOV and camera stuff to show you why perspective is so important to know. So I'm gonna assume you guys know perspective or know some 3D. This is purely about camera placement, okay? So this tourist here shot a nice photo of Notre Dame. It showcases a little bit of the side angle, which is actually the front, and a nice profile. So it gives us a very good sense of 3D awareness of the structure. Versus the front view, we have a very nice front, but it's actually very hard to read the depth of it from the shot. So this is the ideal shot for what you could get as a tourist. It's not the ideal shot of Notre Dame, but I'll show you quickly why this shot is actually not possible to get in the real Notre Dame. But you could get it if you had this as a 3D model. Let's look at the third angle. All right, similar to the first one, except this person is standing to the left of the front versus the right, right? So this person is coming in from the right. This person is coming in from the left, but very similar shot angle. Let's find a person's head. We have a person right there. So most likely the horizon line is right on that person's head, which it is. You look at the railings here, it's pretty much parallel. So the horizon line is somewhere within this range, okay? And that's very easy to figure out because any tourist shot, unless they have very special equipment, it's gonna be head height or below because that's the height of the camera. Okay, you get different heights of tourists. Some are higher, taller than others, but you're going to be fluctuating in a very small, say 3 to 5% of where the horizon line is, okay? And capture a nice front view of Notre Dame. So let's analyze how these shots are done. It's like, why are these photos taken this way? So I went to Google Maps and found where Notre Dame is, and let's analyze that, okay? So let's look at a typical north is up, right? So here north is up. So if a tourist, let me mark where Notre Dame is so you guys can see it. All right, so here's Notre Dame, here's the two towers. This is taken after the fire, unfortunately, so the central spire is actually missing in the shot. Okay, so normally there's a spire there. So north is up here, west is to our left. So if a tourist was coming in from the left and walk this way, okay, as they walk along this road here, they actually could only see the top of the towers. There are trees here, there are little shops, there are all sorts of stuff along the road. You cannot get a clear shot of this building as you walk from the northwest. Now, the minute you cross this bridge here, even here, you cannot get a good shot because of these trees here are blocking your view. Remember, you're a tourist, you're human height, so a lot of things are blocking your view. But by the time you walk right here, is the first time you see the building in its full glory, and you'll see a cluster of tourists hovered here taking the photo, and that is our photo number one right here. Okay, coming in from northwest, you get a beautiful shot. And that's exactly why they designed this courtyard to do. It's a very impressive angle to see the church. You see the front, you see how grand it is, how big it is. So that's a tourist spot. So this camera works quite well. Okay. All right, let me undo these so I can continue using this to make notes. Now, if you're approaching from the direct north, you're coming in from this road. So all along this road, you can't see anything because these apartment buildings are blocking it all. But as you turn the corner right here, you approach from here. So this is the camera shot number 3 that you see here. Okay, another beautiful view, very similar to shot number 1 of the front view. Now, how do we get shot number 2? This shot actually comes from here, approaching from the southeast corner. So if you're coming in from this way, nothing, you can't see anything. All these trees are blocking your view. Okay. Now, but as you walk right here, as the bridge clears and you're standing right at this position, you get a beautiful 3/4 view of Notre Dame from this angle. Okay. Nothing much blocking your view. So you will see the river here, the fence, and then the rest of the building. And if you analyze the photograph, you will see exactly the same thing. You'll see that's the river bank right there. That's the fence, and then we have the rest of Notre Dame. So this shot was taken somewhere along this ridge here. Okay, could be also taken here, so somewhere in this area. So it gives a beautiful shot. And this is actually a very ideal product shot if this was for a piece of concept art. Okay, we haven't cropped anything. We have the building in its entirety. We have very nice perspective on it, so it's not a flat 2D image. It's not a side view or perfect front view. It's in perspective. So we could read that there is a tower shooting out here, right? There's a lot of depth here because of the angle. But like I said, this is not the ideal shot. If we had this actually as a 3D model, the most ideal shot is over here. Okay, so now my camera, I flipped it around. So now my camera is in the north position shooting southward. Okay, so the ideal shot is actually get the front and a little bit of side profile here. Oh, by the way, let me keep track of time. I have no idea how long this is going for. Anyways, this episode could run pretty long. I don't know, but you guys seem to enjoy it, so let's just keep going here. Okay, so now the ideal shot is from the front side profile because front of something is quite important for a structure. However, this shot cannot be achieved in real life because for that to happen, I have to be standing somewhere over here. But as a tourist, I'm in the middle of a courtyard. That's impossible to shoot. Now, if I have access to a roof and get up here, I could sort of get this shot, but I'll still have the bottom of the building blocked. So the ideal shot, if this is 3D, will be to remove all these buildings here, delete all these over here, and place your camera right about here. Exactly the same distance as shot number 2 here, but from the opposite angle. All right. So place here, delete these buildings over here. Now you have a perfect angle. Okay. So that is what I mean by being a tourist. Have your set ready, right? If you're plotting this by hand, obviously you got to do some figuring out beforehand. But if you have this as a 3D model, just walk around the scene as a tourist. And we actually tell our students to physically place a little human character in there, right? Walk that little character around like a tourist. And once you're happy with it, place your camera where that little human eye is and look through that lens. And that's the camera we want. Keep it simple. Okay, let's look at another example of this. Let me make sure I'm actually recording. Okay, I'm recording. Okay. Here, Himeji Castle in Kyoto. We're going to do the same thing to analyze a tourist shot because these are tourist shots, right? This one's sort of a professional shot because of the watermark here, but the other two I just found on Google and they're very common. If you type Himeji Castle, spelled Hemiji, okay? These are the most common camera angles, and I'll explain to you guys why. It's exactly like the Notre Dame shots. These are taken at the ideal camera positions, all right? So here's a beautiful shot of the castle. Here's another one, and here's another one, okay? Shows off the building well, shows off its depth, its front view, its structural. We got some nice compositional elements, which we'll explain later in part 3, but everything's good, okay? Now, how are these shots achieved? So if you're designing this castle and you have it in a 3D model form, what would you do? Okay, so let's analyze this. Let me get my notes here. All right, first of all, let's decide which is the front. Let's just decide that this is the front facing. Okay, we have this little curve thingy right here. Okay, so let's just call that the front. Okay, so if that's the front, then this shot, this is the front, all right? Because we have the same curve roof right here. So that's the front. And in this shot, this is the front going out this way since we have the curve right here. Okay, let's look at shot number well, let's look at number 1. Let's look at this one. Let's start with number 3. Let's start with number 3. Okay. The reason why I want to start with this one is because it has to do with the way tourists are routed as they approach this castle. So here's Google Maps once again, and we have the castle up here in the upper right corner. So the round roof is right there. Okay, so that's the front and that's the side. So first shot, well, let's call it the third shot. Let's not get confusing here. The bottom shot, okay, the bottom shot here. Where is this taken, right? So this person doesn't have a drone. This person is a tourist, but they got this beautiful camera angle on it because this is all designed. It was most likely designed even when this castle was built for the person who first approached this castle to get this awe-inspiring shot or feel of this place, right? If you're gonna spend all this money and time building a place for your emperor, you want people who visit to see it in its always grand glory. So let's go back here. For those who've been here, this is probably familiar. If not, let me just run through how tours are routed through. So here's the entrance here. Okay, so tours are, let me zoom out a little bit here. You start here and you walk this way, you go up here, you go this way, and right now it's under construction, but I believe you actually go through this little building here, end up over here. There's a couple ways to get into this courtyard, but you get to the courtyard here, and you wind here and you make your way into the castle. So it's kind of the typical tourist route for the first time visitors. If you're more advanced, you could wander off to the left here. But let's start from the beginning. This is the start. So all the tourists are gathered here. They have the cameras out and they have this beautiful view of the castle. The view is from right there and it's going this way. This is the cone that we see. Okay, so let's analyze this cone. What do we see? We see the front of the castle this way. Let me just physically mark these. I'll just delete these later. Okay, front of the castle there. We see this is under construction, but this is a little gate right here. And we see a wall right here with a corner, very distinct 9-degree-ish corner right there. And we are the tourists. So using that data, we can actually calculate exactly where the camera position is at, right? So we here, this is about 110-degree angle here. So going back to here, let's find those spots. Check it out. That corner right there is this corner here, all right? So that corner right there, the top of the tower is right there, and that's the front, okay? So this camera angle was taken by a tourist standing at the entrance to this castle. Why? Because that was designed that way. But look at the shot, it works beautifully, okay? So if you have this as a 3D model, instead of flying all over the place, which students tend to do, putting cameras all over the place, putting camera on top of rooftop, putting cameras through like a window, and getting these bizarre shots, just think like a tourist. Where would you go to get a perfect shot? And use that analogy, right? So nowadays we use what? Instagram, right? If you're doing this for your Instagram post, where would you go? Just treat it that way. Keep it that simple. Don't overthink it. Pretend all these places are real. And we'll talk about interiors in a second as well, okay? It's the same type of treatment. Let's look at shot number, let's look at this one, okay? This angle here, how is it taken? Well, earlier we talked about the pathway leading to the courtyard. Let me delete some of these notes. Okay, so courtyard is right here. Tourists are funneled into here. So to get that clear shot, you are standing about here and shooting upwards for, this is the front view there, for this castle. And that's how you get the middle shot right here, okay? So you can see the horizon is still in the shot. All right, horizon line is just really low on the ground here. Well, somewhere right here. Okay, that's camera height. This person is not, oh, you can see a head, perfect. We see a human head right there. So horizon line most likely is right on his head. That's about it, okay? So that means this person is not standing on a ladder. They're not floating above the ground. They're a human being. Because remember, you want to be immersive. You want to put the viewer into the shot. The easiest way to put the viewer into the shot is putting the camera at the height of your viewer. As soon as you float the camera, as soon as you start doing impossible cameras, you are no longer a human being observing this. Of course, later, there's many angles you could do that with, right? A lot of films, a lot of video game concept art, we don't put it on the ground. We don't put it at tourists. But this video is meant for students at the first time they're doing these. If we don't have any control over the camera and they have all freedom, craziness results, okay? And as instructors, you gotta be like, oh man, 90% of these shots are horrible. So we're gonna start as basic steps, okay? Put on the ground, human height, immersive, right? That word is used all the time. Immersive means you are there. So if you're there, put the camera at where the person is at, okay? So let's quickly run through the third shot before we look at some more examples. Okay, third shot here, this is a really nice camera angle here to show off the castle. We have a bit of a front, we have a lot of side, we have a bunch of layers here, a lot of depth of field, a lot of depth in terms of reaching the castle, some trees in between. Ideal concept art camera position. So this camera might look like we're floating above something. It might look like there's a drone or this photographer has a crane. Nope, it's not. You can actually get this shot by physically being there as a tourist. So in fact, this is probably taken by a tourist called Earth Trackers. I don't know who took this shot, but nice, beautiful photo. Okay, so how is this shot achieved? Well, let's look at another angle of this castle. Here's the castle. Here's the front view. Okay, there's the entrance. So to orientate yourself, here's the one of the towers to get through. So to get to this camera angle, you have to wander off the typical tourist path. You have to go to the southern part or the western part of this castle, which is over here somewhere. Let me go back to this one, a little bit easier to see. Okay, so tourists walk this way, walk this way, walk this way, walk this way. So now instead of going to the castle, we're gonna go this way. Okay, I forgot. Oh, here it is. Here's the steps. Gonna go up these stairs. Gonna take this little path right here, and we're gonna walk right into this little tower right there. Okay, we're gonna go to this little guy. Why? Because if you climb the stairs and get to this little windows and stick your camera out, you have this beautiful shot of the castle, and that shot is the top shot here. Okay, let me delete these marks so you can see clearly. Let's use this one as an example. So we see the front, we see these two little towers here, we see another little watchtower right there, we see a wall, and we see another wall, and our camera, another wall here, and our camera is placed inside this shooting outwards, right? So knowing those clues, let's look at shot number one. So we have that way is front, we have the two towers, we have the little watchtower there, which is the one here. We have this wall, a curved wall, which is this one here most likely. We got a double roof. That double roof is right here. All right, I think, yeah, somewhere there. And we have two walls in front of us, which we have right there and right there. So this camera was placed exactly where this little watchtower is to get this shot. It's tourist, it's possible with a tourist, right? Again, we're going to want to make sure that this is humanly possible. We cannot do special placements. We're not on the roof. Tourists are not allowed to go on the roof, okay? So you gotta keep that simple. I know some of you guys are watching go, hey, I have total freedom. Why can't I be creative with my shot? Why can't I put on the roof? Why can't I do all this? Yes, you can. But the danger of that is if you have no control in the beginning of learning fundamentals, there's no way to step-by-step guide the students to do great shots. Because imagine every shot is just horrible. And as an instructor, we're like, oh man, how do we fix this, right? There's that, like you put the roof through a bottle that's on the roof, through a floor tile, looking at half of a subject matter. There's so many things to correct. But if we just tell you, hey, put the camera at floor level as a tourist, most likely the only thing we gotta fix is sort of a left and right thing to fit your composition, to fit your subject matter. But that's the only thing. We don't have to tell you, hey man, put your camera on the floor or put your camera to here. A lot of things gets easier. So that's why I encourage you, if you're learning, keep it simple. Okay. Just a final shot here. Here's a little cartoon drawing of it, but it actually clearly shows the typography of it, like the height of this place. So you can sort of see why at the entrance, right? Here's a little entrance here. From here, you could get this beautiful shot, this with this second entrance here in your shot, right? That's that shot, which is shot number 3. And also that little tower is right here. So if you make your way into the little tower here and shoot this way, you get our shot over here, okay? So look at that, it's that simple. So if this is a 3D model that you have, look at all the freedom you have for camera compositions. But actually, some of the most ideal is just being physically there as a tourist and you get these beautiful shots. This is nothing wrong with this camera. This is perfectly fine, okay? So let me delete this layer so I can continue making notes. All right, let's run through a few more of these before I take a pause just in case something crashes, okay? One more example of tourist photos before we move on to the next stage there. Okay, so here are some shots of a cathedral, church thing, okay? So this is a very typical tourist camera. These are all, by the way, I found these on Google. So I wanted to keep as touristy as possible. I'm trying to look for shots that are just not really professional, just shot by normal people, but they work fine, okay? So here, where's the head height? Right here, because we know the tourist is human height. And we're looking at it's a pretty good shot. It's a little bit down center. Personally, I don't like shots like this for concept art because it's sort of a waste of a camera because the left and right are exactly the same. So the shot I prefer is like this. Okay, we get a little bit more of one side. So you walk to the left or to the right, you get a little bit more here. So we see some depth back here. We still get the front, right? We still get the ceiling. So everything is still here, but we just get a little bit more of the side. So, but both of these are okay. By camera, again, is human height. It's right there, right? So look, it's so easy. I just put where the human is, I go across, and that's exactly where my horizon line is. Check out, right? It's perfectly parallel, right? We have a human here, but a female generally is a little bit shorter than males. It obviously depends on who you are. So you generally want, if you see a female, you have to do an average. It's probably somewhere over here, but might be slightly taller than the average. Okay, so let's look at this one here. So this one, we're looking down a little bit, but it doesn't change the rule. This is still possible if this church allows you to walk on the balcony. In fact, you can see some photography equipment here, I think left over here. So this photographer is on one of these balconies, but they're keeping the horizon still at human height, which is about here, right? So imagine someone on the balcony, they're about this high. So their horizon line is right there. And that's most likely what the horizon is exactly. Let's just try it. Let's go across. And yep, very close. Check out the windowsill right below. We're almost parallel. That means the horizon is within this range here, okay? So it doesn't break the rule. We're still at human height level. We're not floating above anything. We're not doing any of that. And we happen to get a little bit of down angle. So this is doable, okay? This is tourist reachable. So if it's tourist reachable, this shot is valid. And we're not doing anything crazy on top of that. Here's a few more, the same thing, okay? And same thing here. So this looks like we're floating above the church, but most likely is because there is a bend right here, and we have a railing balcony basically below us, but the horizon is still human height. It might look like it's not, but it is. Okay, let's put a human here. And let's just guesstimate a human is about this high. Okay, now if that's how high a human is, let's put a line right across there. Boink. And you'll see that that's exactly what the horizon line is. You can see through these wall decorations, you can see that the horizon line run parallel to these here, right? That means our horizon line is there. Okay, that means it's human height. Okay, the key here is, remember, it's human eye level. So it might not look like it, but it is. It's a human standing on a railing shooting downwards. But this is very valid, and this is a pretty nice concept art to show off the environment. Okay, and when we get to composition, I'll talk about why these shots are ideal. In fact, I'm gonna get to the next shot pretty quickly to tell you what is an ideal shot. Okay, so let's look at a floor plan real quick. We don't have Google Map this time, but we have a floor plan of similar design churches, and let's pretend to be a tourist, right? So you walk through the entrance right here. Generally they're about here. Okay, as soon as you walk in, you do not have a good shot. You have a ton of pillars, right? These cathedrals are built by pillars, so they're essentially a single cell that just have pillars expanded outwards, right? For those who read that what's that book, the Pillars of Eternity or something, it's a pretty cool book. Talks about the building of cathedrals. So essentially just start with columns and they just build their way out. So these structures tend to have a lot of columns inside, which doesn't make it nice for photography, especially if you're here, right? Look at all these columns, they're blocking all your view. But surprisingly, we will have students who put cameras right here, shoot this way, and have a giant beam in the middle of the composition blocking pretty much everything. We see a little bit of the side, a little bit of the side. It sounds so surprising, like why would someone do that? But maybe you guys are doing that because we do see this happen. The reason is because once 3D comes in, the freedom of choice comes in to do whatever you want, then some people make very bizarre choices with their camera. So today is about mitigating that to a minimum, okay? So if you look at all these beams, that makes this area not ideal for any kind of photo to show off the entirety of this church. Remember, we're doing concept art here. We're not doing storyboards. We're not focusing on a very specific corner. We're trying to showcase the entire design. So shooting from these positions is off. Shooting from these positions is pretty much not possible. And for most churches, you cannot even get up here. So this area is pretty much off as well, right? They don't let you up there as a tourist. So for tourists, you pretty much have this T shape. These are the areas you could access without anything blocking you. And that's why you get the middle shot from shot number 1 here, right? This person standing right where the chairs are, right? They're shooting this way. Good. You can also stand this corner and stand this corner. So you could get a shot of the altar with a little bit of the aisles here, right? So this is pretty much the 3 position you see the most, 2, 3, when it comes to shooting at these cathedrals. Same with this one, right? All this area is off, okay? All this is off. Even these areas here, pretty much unshootable, too many columns, okay? All this area, not good. So you're down to pretty much for this particular structure, you're down to this column here, a little bit of here, a little bit of it here, right? If you're lucky and you get up to the altar, we can always do a reverse shot from the altar, probably right about here. See, these are pillars. So if you even stand right here, this shot is very much blocked. You have a column right in front of you. You can't shoot from there. So you want to walk right about here, maybe stand right about there if you can, and shoot it this way. So you get the altar, a little bit of some of these big beams, and you have the entrance way this way. So that will work, okay, as a tourist shot. So, and that's what I mean by placing yourself physically there to see what will be the ideal angle. Okay, let me take a quick edit here just in case things crashes, and we'll continue. Okay, so let's continue here. So let's move on to the next one. Let me delete this layer so we have a fresh layer for making notes. Okay, next one. All right, so here are some examples of good camera positions for both exteriors and interiors. Now, there's a couple of shots on here that are not the best subject matter, but the camera placement is fine, but it doesn't have the best compositions, which will lead to the next topic of talk. Holy crap, I just checked my time. We're like half an hour into this already. But half an hour in a classroom is very, very short. Okay, typically like the school over here at FCD, our courses run for like 4 hours, plus another maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours of just doing questions. So they run for a long time. Fundamentals take a long time, and I've stressed this over and over in my episodes. If you want to take this stuff seriously, you gotta spend the time to learn it, because there's no shortcuts to this. There's so much stuff in terms of fundamentals underneath these things that pros make it look so easy. And as you watch these episodes, start to realize how much planning there are to make these things work. And for professionals, these things come naturally. You know, as they draw, they already have this built in, right? I always mention basketball playing. Like, basketball players don't think about dribbling a ball. They've been doing it in their entire life, so they don't think about it. But if you never play basketball, you cannot expect to be playing the game all well if you cannot even dribble. But to dribble, that is years of practice. So same thing here. This is a physical skilled industry, right? You have to draw with your hands and look with your eyes. So the only way to get better is through practice. And to practice any kind of skill base, it takes a long time and takes a lot of knowledge, because the reason why I stress that is because we see younger students sometimes, they don't have this patience. They want to become a badass concept artist right now. I want it now, and I'd be working on the next Assassin's Creed. It's like, dude, that's not possible, because this is a very hard business to get into, filled a lot of professionals, and if you don't have these skills and you're not willing to put in the time, you're not going to get in. So anyways, that's why this episode maybe will run for 2 hours. Who knows? Just fundamentals takes a long time. Okay, so let's look at these shots. Let's start with this one here of this Japanese village, okay? Camera position, remember, we're going to always do our checklist. Our number one rule is it at a physical location a tourist could get to? Is it human height? Is it possible to get to this location? That's all I'm going to check. So possible, yes, we have a human actually right there. Okay, so let's use him as a head. Doink. Perfect. That's exactly where my horizon line is. And so therefore, checklist number one is done. Now we look at our subject matter. Is anything cropped? No. Perfectly shot? Good. Okay, does this work as a piece of concept art? It sure does. Okay, now replace this with sci-fi building, police station, cyberpunk bar, whatever it is. Don't worry about the subject matter. We'll worry about the framing and the camera position. So in terms of selling this thing, it works well, but it's not the most ideal. This is very similar to Notre Dame shot number one, in which we get a perfect front view of Notre Dame, but we don't have a sense of depth. And that's where shot number two comes in, right? A similar building, but first let's check the camera height. So we have a car here, so assume a human being is somewhere right about here, okay? And that's pretty close. The actual horizon line, let me see here, is right here. That's the actual horizon line. And we know this by understanding perspective, right? So you can see the number 5 here written in Japanese here, or Chinese. It's parallel, right? So that parallel line, if I borrow that parallel line and go all the way across, you can see that's also parallel across the windowsills, meaning that our horizon line is exactly right here. So that's where the camera is at, okay, the camera's height. And that happens to be a human height as well. We have a door. So that satisfies our rule number one, okay, which is human height. Now, subject matter here, great. It fits in frame. Nothing is cropped. But this time we have a little bit of front. If you want to call this the front, you could call this the front. Doesn't matter. Basically, we have a 3/4 angle of both, basically a 45 essentially, of this structure, giving the 3D artist and your viewer a good understanding of this structure. So this is a little bit more ideal than this one, but both work. It all depends on what your subject matter is. So this is an entrance to a castle. We still got plenty of perspective, right? It's not a front view shot. Front view or side view are pretty boring for most cases, unless you're doing a very far away establishing shot. But if you're trying to show off a structure, perspective really needs to come in. Otherwise, it's not immersive. Why? Because the human eye don't see things like this in 2D. We see it in perspective. We see it in the world. And that's going to get even more exaggerated as we get to section 2, which is the FOV. Okay, now let's finish this here. Here's another, here's a farmhouse in Europe, right? Let's check camera height. So we have a door. When you have a door, you could pretty much estimate what the height is, because humans are pretty much here to the door. So if I'm going to draw a horizon line right across there, and that's almost exactly what the horizon line's at, mean camera height. Okay, why do we know that? See, like, these are straight, this is parallel, means our horizon line is right there, and that's camera. Okay, so checklist number 1 satisfied. Is our subject matter completely in frame? Check. Okay, subject matter not cropped, it's all inside. So this is pretty good for a piece of concept art. Nothing wrong with it, it works fine. But you can actually get a little bit better just by walking a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, which you'll see in this shot here. Okay, so here's a little farmhouse, right? Similarly, where's the camera? So here's a door. So our horizon line is going to be somewhere right here. Okay, this cameraman is actually standing on a little bit of a hill, not a hill, but a little bit of a step here. You can see, right? So they're a little bit higher on the horizon line, but close enough. This is pretty close to the horizon. So check, as a tourist, you could get to this position. But now this time we have a little bit of the side, a little bit of front. So this gives us more 3D information. So this works well, and everything's not cropped. Good. Okay. Now let's look at some interiors here. Now actually let's look at these. Okay. So here we have a Japanese street, and here's a European street. Okay. Both of these are pretty good, but what's missing here is actually the subject matter. Camera placement is fine, right? The human height, somewhere right there, good. Okay, human height for this one, we cannot use these guys because we're on a hill, so we have to use a door. So let's use like this door over here. So this door, maybe a little bit higher, right? We're higher than this door, so we gotta use this door. So somewhere right here. So this is most likely where the horizon line is, but actual horizon, if I find it, is actually a bit taller than that. It's actually over here. So this person is actually standing quite high on the hill. All right. So if I go where the door is, there's another door right about here. Okay, so that's the actual horizon. But it is a tourist boat shot. This is totally reachable. You don't need a drone. You can see we're pretty close to the ground. So this is taken by a person, okay, without any kind of special equipment. So, but both of these suffer from the same thing, which is camera placement is good, but no subject matter. There's nothing here. Everything here is a side view-ish of a building. We're not exactly sure what we're going to be looking at. So what will make this shot work is by having something here, you know, ox cart, I don't know, some kind of knight going through, a samurai riding a horse going through, right? Some kind of subject. Same thing here. All these buildings are sort of side view-ish. We're not exactly sure what we're looking at. We do have a castle here. That could be our subject, but in this case, the subject is too small. If you're going to have that as a subject, this shot should be something like this, okay? In which we clearly tell you that's what we're looking at. So that is no longer a subject, that's now a background. So to make this work, we have to put something here. So say a bunch of trolleys, bunch of carts, I don't know, a knight, a bunch of knights, right? Something like that put in here. So that's why doing things like this is very, very difficult. There's so many little subtle things under here, because we will see shots like this from students. And we look at it, go, okay, you did a great drawing of it, but what are we supposed to be looking at? What are you trying to sell us, right? Yes, it's a European street. It looks nice, but there's no focal point. We're not clearly knowing what we're supposed to be looking at, right? Same thing right here. Okay, let's look at some environments here, internal. So I used this before to do the lighting tutorial, right? So here's a bedroom set of some castle. Works quite well. Human height, check. Always check the human height. Reachable location by tourists, check. Okay, subject matter, this bed, things, all not cropped, check, good. Okay, next one. Fireplace, well, first human height, right? Human height somewhere probably right about here, check. Okay, subject matter is a fireplace, a huge one. Dining table, check, no problem there. Okay, here's a little living room thing. Human height, check, that's the horizon. Okay, good. Nothing is cropped. We see a pretty good view of this room. Easy to communicate. Last one. Human height, check. But now our fireplace is cropped. Okay, we do see it. It works quite well. Our table is almost on the verge of being cropped. So this shot works as a camera placement, as a tourist location where you can physically stand. It works. But the thing that's not working now is this is not ideal concept art, because we're getting too little information for what's drawn here. It's too close for a early establishing shot of a room interior. We want to communicate as much as possible, because we got to stress this again. We're not doing illustration here. We're not doing a storyboard. We're not doing characters having a good old time drinking. That's not our job, right? That's the marketing department. That's the illustrators that's going to take this environment, bring it to life. Our job is to showcase, like pretty much like an architect, what does this place look like? What are the things in it? Not the story of what the characters are doing in here, but the physical objects that takes place here. So to do that, we want to pull our camera out as far as possible before it distorts, but enough to capture as much information as possible. To do that, it gets to phase 2, the part 2 of our talk, which is the FOV. Okay, we want to pull the camera out more to showcase the rest of this fireplace and a little bit more the rest of the room. For example, there's a window up here. We want to see that. So that gets us to number 2. Okay, we're going to be dealing with FOV, field of view. Okay, we'll be talking about cameras just in case some of you guys don't play games and FOV is a little confusing. But let's start with FOV. Okay, remember, we are doing a 2D image. Okay, 2D image means whatever you're seeing here, having 2 eyeballs doesn't help. Okay, the next time you play a video game, watch a movie, you could close one of your eyes and the experience is exactly the same. The reason why is because the image in front of you on the screen is 2D. Okay, so to achieve the 2D image, we gotta think the double eyeballs in our eyes don't work anymore. You have to rely on a single eye to convince the viewer that this space is 3D and the space is believable to their feeling, right? The way the brain translates that. So the ideal FOV for video games, if you play games, is going to 90 to 120 to showcase the environment. I know some of you gamers are saying, hey, but a lot of video games set FOV at 60. Okay, I'll explain that later why that is. But for a piece of concept art is not playing video game. Concept art is showing design. We want to see the world as much as possible. And a wider FOV between 90 and 120 gives you a wider view of the environment. So doesn't matter if interior or exterior, you see more. Okay. For a lens, for those who do photography, something between 35mm and below works well. Like you could even go sometimes as far as like an 8mm lens. Very small focal distance, but very wide angle. So it gets into almost a fisheye lens in that case, but it works for certain things. Because our goal is to showcase the design. We want to fit as much as possible in camera. Okay, if the space is small, we want to open up the lens or the FOV even more. So in that previous example of that little room right here, okay, if your back is against the wall already here, right, say a torus, remember we don't want to break rule number 1, right? We want to always make sure each rule is stacking on top of the other one. If you're a torus and you're in this view here, then the only way to capture the rest of the room is to switch to a wide angle lens. But that's exactly what photographers do, okay? And that's what we're gonna do for us as well. So let me explain to you the wider angle and why the human eye is different than concept art eye, okay? Let's use this one here, okay? So you can see here, this is a pretty good illustration that I grabbed off of Google here, showing what you actually see, okay? So you have 2 eyeballs together, each one, right, combined here, this is only 30 degrees here, 15, 15. 30 degrees is things are actually in focus, meaning that you can see it clearly. 35, you can see a little bit more clear, but start to get blurry. At 60-degree cone of vision, okay, which is the console games, for example, 60-degree, most of the stuff out here are all blurry. They're peripheral vision. You cannot clearly see that. And you can test it yourself by putting a book or something that has big letters just to the left or right side of you. You actually cannot read that. Like on my desk right here, I have some logos of things right to my left. I can see it now if I turn my head, but if I do this, I cannot read those logos. They're all blurry, okay? So for a human eye, why does the world feel clear, right? We're not walking around like the world is drunk. We can still see it clearly. The reason is because you're moving your eye and your head constantly. You're covering this 180 degree up to about 200 degree in front of you constantly. And you're doing that subconsciously, not thinking about it. You're just looking left, looking right, and your brain is taking those visual cues and translating that to data. So you see that and everything appears clear, but in reality, it's not clear. In reality, only the immediate things in front of you are in perfect focus. Everything else is actually just kind of blurry, right? But we're so used to this that we don't get dizzy, for example, right? So we look left, look right, and I'm doing it. But if you actually just calm down, right? Just take a deep breath, and just look in front of you. I gotta look not at the screen. Let me go here. Okay. Actually, everything to the left and to the right is blurry. You know, they're not in focus, but it doesn't make me dizzy. So for a human, that's fine. But when you're doing a piece of concept art and you only draw within this field, okay, your view is way too small. you want to capture what a viewer actually feel, which is 180 degrees. Okay, everything in this room, I want to see everything, and you want to see everything clearly. Okay, we don't want concept art to look like everything's just here, right? So too zoomed in doesn't help. We want to zoom out to capture almost 180 degree view of this space, basically as much as possible. So let's take a look at FOV here. So here we go, right? So look at that. This one has a 200 degree view, but somewhere right here is about 120. Okay, 120 is very comfortable because if you're standing in front of this environment and you just move your eye a tiny to the left, a tiny to the right, you'll capture about 120 degrees, and that is perfect for concept art. And that's the FOV we want to use. So let's take a look. Okay, here's some games, right? Here's Battlefield. So on console, they have it at 60, and I don't want to get in the whole, it's pretty complicated why 60 on console. It has to do with TV position being far from the viewer. So 60 feels actually correct without fisheyeing. And the rest of the living room makes up the other 60 degrees. Added together is 120, right? But if you're playing on a PC, we want the FOV to be much higher because the PC screen is closer to the viewer. But anyways, that's off topic now. But let's just see how much the viewer sees, okay? At 60 degrees, this is all you see. Okay, you're very limited to your environment. If you turn your head, nothing happens, right? Imagine you're not moving at all. In an FPS game, this works because you can move the camera and you can look to the left, to the right. But this is a concept art. This is it. You cannot move your eye anymore. So you're like, man, this is pretty claustrophobic. Now, if I zoom out to 120, okay, boom. This is starting to feel like concept art. If I put a castle in here, well, let me get to the right line here. Imagine there's a castle here. I could fit a lot of information here, right? Say something like this, okay? Whatever this is. Look at 60, we just see the edge of it, okay? So here, we can see a lot more of it. The only way to get a castle to fit in here is if the castle is really far away, like over here, okay? So wider FOV works, okay? Now, always a fine balance though, between too wide becoming fisheye. Fisheye is not comfortable, but this has to do with subject matter, and we'll see some examples of that later. Let's look at one more, just a bunch of snow, but here's FOV of 60, 58, close enough, okay? Pretty zoomed in, you still see some stuff here, but not ideal for concept art. For concept art, look at 90 degree, already feels much, much better, okay? These buildings, we'll move it over here somewhere to look good. We'll talk about that in part 3, composition, okay? If I go out to 120, that's a nice shot. Okay, let's look over here. I don't know what game this is from. I don't know if this is Far Cry maybe, I'm not sure. But look at 60, okay? Look how much cropped in we are. It works for a game, again, because you can move the camera. Okay, you have the freedom to move left and right. But concept art's 2D is locked to a single drawing. Imagine when you have one drawing. You don't have any other drawing to supplement with this. This is it. The client will be like, oh, great, I see a part of a boat. I see part of a town. I don't feel the world. I don't feel immersed in it. Now let's go to 120. Yeah, 120. Okay, look at that. I see the nice pier. I see a little bit of background here. I see the whole mountain. A lot more, and this is what we want to capture in the concept art, okay? And again, the camera position is a human eye. We know that because it's an FPS, so they put the camera at human eye anyways, okay? Look how little of this shot is here. So look, you see the boat is cropped here, the town is cropped here. So if we use the 120, that shot essentially is right there, right? Look how cropped in that is at 60 degrees. So 120 shows you way more, and that's what we want. Okay, let's look at this one here. I don't even know what game this is. Days Gone or something maybe, I'm not sure. But look at 60 degrees, we see a little bit of the bridge, a little bit of town, guys all cropped in there, sort of good but pretty claustrophobic. At 90, starting to feel pretty good. Okay, this we're seeing the little bit of rock, we see the bridge, we see a little bit of town, we see the background. This one you can't even see the mountain, you barely see it. Okay, so this is starting to become concept art. Okay, at 120, now we see the mountain and the rock and the bridge works quite well. But for the 90 and 120, they both tend to work okay for a piece of concept art. It gives us enough information. Okay, quickly let's look at lens. Okay, so for those who are photographers, okay, so wide angle lens is anywhere 35 and below. We're starting to get some wide angles, right? And look at the results here. Okay, at 300 mil, which is really flat, this is your flat camera. Okay, flat, no perspective here. Everything's pretty much a side view. Look, if I draw lines across, everything's parallel. Okay, because this camera here basically got rid of all the perspective. Whoops, turn it back on. So that's not what we want. This is only good for certain kind of shots, like far away, establishing a castle in a foggy mist or something, right? But for show off the environment, especially for 3D artists, this is not very ideal. 200, still pretty flat. 100 mil works a little better, but almost no perspective here. 50 mil, starting to feel good, but still feels a little bit claustrophobic, no perspective, so it doesn't put us in the view. 18, little far, so what we want in between, probably somewhere right about here. That's going to get you probably, say, a 24 mil. Okay, that works quite well for concept art. So the human eye, by the way, is about a 50. So you can see this chart here, put the human at 50. So for human eye, it's actually too claustrophobic. Remember, we just reviewed. We only have whatever is in front of us in focus. Everything to the left and right is not. So if you use a 50 mil to do concept art, it's actually quite zoomed in. It doesn't feel natural. So you definitely want to open that up. Okay, here's another example. Some Italian town, very famous location. Look at 100 mil, no perspective. Everything is just parallel, flat. Pretty boring for a piece of concept art. Is easier to draw because you don't have to know your fundamentals. You don't have to know your perspective grids. Easier to draw, but it's not ideal. 85, still not the most ideal. 50, this is human eye. Sort of works, right? You get some of the buildings here, some of this. You see a little bit of beach, a little bit of water. Kind of okay, but let's keep going out. 35 mil. Okay, that's the minimum that I tell our students to set, right? 35 mil. You can see here, this start to feel concept art, right? Nice building. We have background. We have a little bit of this. We have some foreground. Start to feel comfortable. It feels natural because your eyes going to start to look to the left. Your eyes going to look to the right, and it feels pretty good, right? Our focal point is somewhere over here, but we have enough peripheral vision to make you feel comfortable. But if I go all the way out to 28, that still works quite well. All the way out to 25, still works pretty good. All the way out to 21 mil, still feels good, okay? 18, okay, this is the shot as a whole, 18. This still works really well as a concept art, okay? Because we see so much more, and this makes us sell the world better. And this shot actually still falls in the category is the viewer on the horizon, right? This person most likely in an apartment building across from this. So this is touristable, this is doable. The horizon line is still here, okay? So this person's in the window shooting this. So this is still valid with our #1 rule. Okay, a few more here. Look at 100 mil. This building is pretty much a side view. Okay, there's no perspective at all. So it's not very immersive. Basically, when the camera gets to 100 and above, images tend to become more graphical. Okay, they're good for portraits, they're good for storyboards, they're good for illustrations, but not ideal for selling concept art. Again, especially for showing it to a 3D artist, okay? So concept art has many, many categories. We're here talking about junior artists selling design, not selling story, not selling characters jumping around, shooting guns and doing storyboard stuff. Selling a design, showing a prop, showing an object, okay? So this here, 100 mil, doesn't show this object well. It looks good as a graphic, but we don't know what the heck's going on, okay? 85 mil, starting to work, but still pretty storyboardy. Okay, this works as a storyboard. Like we have a spaceship taking off and a couple of guys walking towards the spaceship. Good, but that's more of an illustrative concept art versus product view. Okay, at 50 mil, a little bit better. Could be zoomed out a little bit further. 35, good. Okay, we have some nice perspective going on here. We have a little bit of environmental awareness. The subject matter is pretty clear now, and we have a lot of depth. And the human eye, right? Rule #1 still applies. This works, okay? 28 mil still works. Now we're getting a little bit more foreground element. We have the edge now where the photographer is actually standing. This is pretty ideal, and this is what you see in concept art for environmental object showing, okay? At 17 mil, a little bit wide for my preference. So for me, I think this is a little bit wide. It's doable, but we're starting to see distortion on the lens here. We're starting to see the fisheye. I don't know if this is actually distortion or the actual built that way, but the fisheye is starting to come in pretty heavy. So I prefer this 28, somewhere between the two. I think maybe a 24, right? So, but this works quite well. But let's just review. See 100 doesn't, okay? Let's look at this one. This is a portrait here. So 200 mil, you can see it as environment. Okay, remember we're not doing storytelling. So if you're doing a movie, a shot of an illustration, this works perfectly, right? We're showing the character, they're gonna talk to each other. And this is what directors do when they're shooting a film. They use 50s, they use 80s, they use 120s, they use 200 mils, up to even 400 mils, because they're focusing on the story. But a film could go from one shot to another to give you a sense of the environment. For a piece of concept art, you have one drawing. So imagine the backgrounds we want to show. If we take the character out, there's nothing here, okay? So we give very little information. 135, still pretty punched in. 70 mil, a little bit better. We get the character still, but we get a little bit more in the environment, okay? 50 mil, human eye, okay? Starting to work, but the character is still a little bit cropped, you know, especially if you want to showcase a little bit of the costume, for example, right? Someone standing here, still cropped, but looks like 24. 24 feels pretty good. Okay, we could have things back here, a farmhouse, whatever it is. We could have a character walking, a horse, whatever you want, but feels like concept art camera. Okay, 12 mil still works, especially if you're doing a big structure. Okay, so if you have a big structure back here, this works, and we can have some nice foreground, like a bridge coming over here, like a walkway, right? Some railings here, so here's a gate, right? And then background castle. This is what you see in a lot of concept art. Okay, and the horizon line is still here. So this works. So 12 mil, if this scene is huge, works quite well. Okay, so let me take another break here before we move on to the part 3. So quick review, we have talked about tourist camera, placing it at human eye level where tourists could reach. Second, we talked about opening the FOV. If it's a game, something like 90, 120 and above works quite well. Anything over 120, you're gonna get fisheye, which doesn't look so good, like here. Okay, so we want to be somewhere in between. So open up your lens for concept art. All right, so let's continue here. So let's move on to section 3, which is talking about basic composition. Okay, we already reviewed the camera height, camera position, and as well as FOV. So now we're going to talk about the most basic composition. Now composition is a huge beast on its own. Okay, you can spend many episodes on good composition, like the rule of thirds and how to balance your composition, how to flow your forms. There's a lot of things that has to do with composition, and it takes long time to learn it, years, okay, to get good at composition. Today, I'm only going to talk about the most basic things you need to have, and just 3 elements. Okay, if you have rule number 1, which is camera height and reachable towards position, you have high enough FOV to showcase your design, and you have these 3 elements in your shot, you are already doing the right thing. Okay, and then you can move on from here slowly, get more experience. Okay, so let's talk about these 3 things and why they are important. So these 3 elements are foreground, midground, and background. Having these 3 elements in your shot is really important to create that, I don't like this word, but the immersive experience. Okay, you want to put the viewer inside your shot. So again, by putting them at human height, by opening up the eye so it feels comfortable to a human eye to look at it, so it feels like you can look left and right and still being focused. The third one is, how do we create that sense of depth? How do we make it feel like we're actually in this world? And these 3 elements all play a vital role. Okay, let's talk about them. Okay, so foreground, what is it for? Okay, it's up close to near the camera, and its purpose is to reference scale. And usually this is something that's human size. For example, a human being in the foreground, that works. A rock, a leaf, a door, a chair, whatever these elements are, they're very easily recognizable as a human size object. By having that object, you get an instant scale reference of how far your subject matter actually is, which is our midground. Okay, the subject itself is the midground. This is what you're trying to tell your viewer to look at. Okay, so in the previous examples, like a farmhouse, the Himeji Castle, Notre Dame, that is your subject matter. So the foreground gives you a scale reference of basically how far you are from this subject matter. So usually you'll see in concept art, we just use the back view of a person. It's one of the easiest ways to get the foreground element in there without spending too much time, or like some leaves, some grass. It all works fine because we recognize that as human scale. That means it must be very close to the cameraman. Okay, the last one is background. So for exterior views, background gives us context. It tells the viewer where we are. So it's mountains, forests, clouds, whatever it is. And if it's an interior, we make up for that background by putting a window or a strong light source. So it opens up the composition, and later you'll see in the examples. Okay, so our goal again is to showcase the design. We are not doing a storyboard. Okay, we're not doing characters fighting and doing all sorts of crazy poses. Okay, so having these 3 elements is good. Now for our students, especially since they're designing environments, we want to make sure that the characters and humans they put in there are in very easily drawable positions. Okay, we don't want to be doing complex posing. We don't want to be doing characters jumping up and down and talking to each other and doing crazy poses and having action shots. No, we don't want to do any of that, because that's not what you're getting paid to do. You're getting paid to showcase this building or this environment or this set. Okay, so doing all that on characters, generally if you're very pro, that's fine, but as a student they always tend to spend way too much time to draw a character in there doing something when it's completely unnecessary. We don't need that character. In fact, it shows an empty set, it's fine. Okay, so what we generally want to do is put a character in there just standing still. Okay, basically all it is it's a scale reference. Just back view, if you don't want to draw faces, just a back view standing there, looking at the environment. It's perfectly fine. And you'll see that over and over in a lot of professional level concept art. We do the same thing, okay? We don't want to be spending time on something that's not important. Our job is to showcase the set, what's in it, the structure, how big is it? That's our job. Characters walking around is completely optional. And if you're not good at drawing it, you don't need to even put it in. So we basically want to balance the time spent. Okay, so let's take a look at that. And what I mean by, let's go back to the foreground, midground, background. Okay, here's some examples of my own demos I've done for students in the past, and you'll see these in every single one of my compositions. But at this point, we want to check off all 3 points, right? Camera position, right? Horizon line, eye level, Y FOV, and now foreground, background, midground. So let's go through all 3 of these. So first, camera position, human height. Okay, so there are these creatures in this riverbank. So I'm a tourist. I'm gonna be standing on the shores. I don't want to get my feet wet either. So I'm gonna be standing on the shores and shooting a photo of this. So this is human height level. So this is how big it is. Okay, it's a pretty wide angle lens. Check. Okay, very wide actually. And the third thing we're gonna check now is foreground. Foreground are these little leaves you see right there. Our subject are these funky looking creatures in here. And then our background, of course, is over here, right? So we have context. And this is a very, very standard concept art drawing to showcase the design, which is the subject matter. Remember, we want to have the subject. That's these guys, okay? These creatures. Humans are not doing anything complex, right? These guys are just fishing, so nothing difficult to draw. We're not going to use our character to distract our environment. In this case, we're actually doing creature design, okay? So it's showing a creature in its natural environment. Let's take a look at this one here. So first thing to check, eye level, right? I put it right where the human eye is. So this is a big creature like this rhino thing. So I'm placing the camera at human eye level, actually makes this creature look big. If I was to put the camera a little bit higher, it actually makes this creature look smaller. But if you're a human being, you will not see a big creature like this from a few steps up, right? Unless you have a ladder. So this camera actually helps this design. Okay, so we have that FOV very wide. You look at the floors here, you can see that I'm not going to be explaining perspective here, right? I'm assuming you guys already know some basic perspective here, but this is a very wide angle lens, judging just by the vanishing points. So we have that. And number 3, we have the composition basic, right? That's 1, this is our 2, and we have our background number 3. So 1 2 3, right? Foreground, midground, subject, background. Another one. Okay, camera here, or right about here where the humans are. Okay, so this photographer is standing a little bit above the on a low hill here, which you can see. Okay, so this is a 2D image, but we can still think of as a photographer. Where am I standing when I took this shot of this village? Okay, I'm standing a little bit above the hill. We're very, very wide angle lens to capture all this in a single shot, right? So the lens is pretty much like this. Okay, so we have 1 and 2 checked. Number 3 is foreground, midground, background. So foreground is here, midground is our buildings, and then we have our background. Okay, you guys are starting to see a formula happening here. Okay, and that's exactly what I mean. Just like, again, going back to basketball, dribbling a ball, every NBA player pretty much dribbles similarly. Okay, some might have a very specific way, but they're pretty much the same thing. That is the underlying fundamental. Playing the game, everyone plays it different. Some play it better, some play it worse, right? Playing the games where you get paid for. Dribbling ball is not what they pay NBA players to do. Okay, they paid NBA players to play the game. So for us, the same thing. If you have this formula, that doesn't mean like we get students like, oh, I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. I want to do my own thing. Then you look like, hey, but Steven Spielberg, Peter Jackson, James Cameron, what you call it, all these famous directors, right? Scorsese, they're all using the same rule. They're all using this formula because it's not about the formula. This is a fundamental. It's about the subject matter. So you make your living by what's in it. Okay, so we always have to repeat that to our students. If you don't want to follow this formula, fine. But it doesn't matter what this is. If your subject matter sucks, doesn't matter. No? So what we do is we try to minimize the difficulty. We set this structure up because it works. This kind of camera structure, this camera placement, this FOV just works. And now we spend all our time figuring out what goes inside it. Okay, what are we actually trying to shoot? What are we trying to design? I don't want to be spending time trying to be like, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is, where do I put my camera? Let me try everything possible to find the most interesting camera angle and waste 2 hours trying to figure out a camera. Nope. Instead, I set up my camera in literally seconds. Okay, 2-3 seconds in, I already got my camera set up. Now I spend 99.9% of my time designing. But for students, we tend to see the opposite sometimes. They spend 30-40% of the time trying to figure out where the camera goes, trying to figure out, man, I'm gonna do something different. I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to just be special and different from everybody else. And in most of the time, they end up with a very horrible camera that makes no sense, that doesn't show the subject well. And because they lost all that time, now they got to rush to get their design, and that the design therefore suffers. Okay, so in case like this, look, the setup is almost the same, horizon line, and later I'll show you my formula. I pretty much use the exact same way, basically dribbling a ball. Okay, I don't change the way I dribble a ball, but what you want to do is you want to always get better at playing the game, okay, which is the subject. Let's look at another one here. Okay, I'll go through these pretty quick because there's a lot of these, just to reinforce the all the rules that we talked about. Okay, number one rule, camera position. Good. Human height, we actually have a human here, so human height, check. Very wide angle lens, check. Do we have 1, 2, 3? 1, 2, 3. Foreground, which is this character. We're not selling this character. It's nothing to do with this scene. We're selling this environment. So back view, standing there. This thing takes 5 minutes to draw. We're good. Okay, we want to spend the rest of our many hours doing this, right? So our subject matter is this throne thing here, and then we have a background. 1, 2, 3. Check. Okay. Next one here. Rule number one. Is it a horizon? We are. Human height, right here. So we have a subject here, wide angle lens, all there. This is a very wide angle lens. So we have 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now looking at this, I just want to be clear. I think some of you guys might think or get confused of what does it mean, the horizon line and human height. What it means is that the horizon and the human are the same level. Okay. So in this case, if I shrink everybody, I could make people this big too, right? I could do that. Imagine, it's very easy to shrink people down. So imagine these statues are just huge, and humans are standing over here. Okay, this shot no longer follows rule number one, which is human height. To get this shot, I'm not at these guys' level. I need a ladder about 10 feet tall, or some 10 feet tall ladder to get this shot. So I'm breaking rule number one. So if I want to follow rule number one and my statues are that big, then I gotta put the camera up where this guy is and shoot it upwards this way. Okay, then that goes back to rule number one. So hopefully that makes sense now. But my statues are not that big. My statues are this guy's size. So I put them at same horizon as where the head's at. Okay, so his eyeballs are exactly where that line goes through. Here it's not. If I put a line through their heads, the horizon line is not in the correct position. My actual horizon line is here. This is the correct horizon line. This is not where the horizon line at. Okay, hopefully that's starting to make sense. So that's rule number one. Rule number two, wide angle. And number three is 1, 2, 3. Let me make it clear so we can see that. 1, 2, 3. Foreground, which is human scale. Literally just put a human. That's the easy what to do. Subject matter, not cropped, very clear. And number 3 is our background. 1, 2, 3. Both of these shots have the exact same camera fundamental setup. Okay, you can see your horizon line is right there. Horizon line's right. In fact, let's try this. Let me see what happens. Okay, I'm gonna draw some very basic perspective lines here. Okay, let's just move this grid down to the bottom. All right, just so you can see clearly. This is my perspective grid and horizon line indication on the top shot. Let's just move it to the bottom here. And the only thing I gotta do is probably, it's pretty much matched up. Let me reverse it a little bit. This way is better. Okay, check it out. It's almost exactly the same, right? And this is what I mean by dribbling a basketball. I don't want to rethink these fundamentals each time I do a concept art. My job is to come up with the design. My job is not to be a cinematographer and come up with crazy camera angles and all that. Just keep it standard. My job is to showcase the what's in it. Okay, so by using the same setup, my subject are completely different, right? This is a tree throne thing. This is like snakes in the temple, right? They're completely different things, but I use the same setup. Okay, let's keep going here. A few more. I'll rush these even faster, so let's just quickly review, right? Complete different subject matters, pretty much the same camera setup. So my horizon is here. These guys are below because my camera is actually on the rocks. I'm standing on the rocks, so I'm putting them below. So in this case, you might ask, hey, how come the camera is not here, right? So, but it's very, very close. My camera is just slightly higher. In this case, because I don't care about these human beings, I'm selling this. So to sell this, I put the camera at the same height as a tourist will see this, which is here, right? So if I delete these two characters, it doesn't change my set because my view is still tourist height. So hopefully that starts to make sense here. I'm showing this from where I want this environment to be seen if you are a tourist. So these guys are below because they're actually here, but they're standing on the rock. Check it out. Okay, if they're standing on the rock, just put their leg here. Boom, right, a little bit lower, right? You can see that now they're back to the same horizon. Okay, hopefully that makes sense here, right? So that horizon is perfect, okay? So here, same thing, I'm standing on a rock. My horizon line is just a little bit above because I'm standing above the scene. My job is to sell this, not my characters, okay? But I'm still at Taurus height. Here, horizon line is just below. Remember, it's head height and below. So I want to make sure I capture this dragon. So I'm going to put my camera just a little bit lower. So my horizon is actually right about here. And each one of these have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The skulls is my 1. The eagle is my 2. My background is a 3. This guy is my 1, right? That's not the subject matter. Subject matter is this dragon thing, is 2. Background here, I don't have a exterior, right? We're doing interior. So remember, we covered that with a window or light source. So number 3 is right there. This could also be a 3 right there. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's keep reviewing. And of course, all 3 have very wide angle lenses. Okay, boink. Same thing here, almost exact same formula. Camera height is right there. My horizon, so Taurus shot, right? Subject matter in the shot, wide angle lens. And we have 1, 2. So this interior, so we use windows. 3. Okay, if it's interior, challenge is a window or light source. Later, I'll show you guys some work that's not from myself, just from our students, as well as from the internet, like professional work. You'll see the same formula being applied. So here we have a human. So in this case, I do want to put it from exact his view, right? Just like the snake statue earlier. So horizon's right where his head's at. And he's also the 1. This is the 2. Light source in the back is our 3. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Subject matter is not cropped. Everything's in view and very wide angle lens. Notice these shots use the same camera. I'll show you what that means. Let me draw a clean one so you'll see this in play here. It's pretty interesting. Okay, let me use this smaller image to showcase. So horizon line in there. Okay, vanishing points you can see on the floor. Here's my vanishing point. It has a 1 point in the shot. So my VP is going into my horizon. Okay, you can see all these. All right, so that's the vanishing point. I have a secondary vanishing point for my 2-point perspective going that way. Okay, so using this perspective setup, this camera setup essentially, let me move it upwards. Okay, let's see if this works for this shot. Okay, make it bigger. And you will see it's almost exactly the same camera, just off by a tiny bit. Okay, so these are drawings are done at completely different times, but you can see they almost line up. Why? Because I just stick to this formula for my basic setup. The subject's something completely different, okay? So, but the fundamental rule behind it is the same. And that's what I'm trying to do with this episode and also to our students is when you are learning, keep things simple. Do one thing at a time, okay? Keep this formula, do 100, 200 paintings with this or drawings with it. Make sure you get this down. And then you can start toying around with better cameras or more interesting camera angles, right? But at least get the fundamentals right before you put too much complexity on top of your setup, okay? Just keep the setup easy. Focus on what's in here. Because I do see a lot of students, because they spend so much time on the things that are not important. You know, they're doing their own set of fundamentals essentially. And as a result, they hurt their design. The design has no value. We look at it as like, great, you spend all that time drawing some random stuff on the side or trying to pick your camera. Meanwhile, whatever you're trying to sell us is not interesting at all, okay? We want the subject to be interesting. Okay, here's a sci-fi one. Same exact thing happening here, right? Horizon line, human height, check. Okay, wide angle lens, check. 1, 2, 3. Okay, human height, check. Wide angle lens, check. Foreground is our bunch of humans. These are our foreground. Subject matter is this building. Background is bright, number 3. Okay, simple. Here are some students. So I put this here to showcase our students. The difference between a concept art and illustrative keyframe. So these are done by our students, by the way, so they're not mine here. On the left here are very good examples of 3 different subject matters, you know, completely different. Here's a Viking ship dock. Here's a kind of post-apocalyptic interior. Here's a crashed train in Shanghai 1920s, right? Completely different, but all the same setup, and they all follow the same rules we just talked about. Let's go through what the rules are. So Taurus angle, human height, that's this guy right there. And you can see by tuning a horizon line across, it hits everyone's heads, right? At this level, so that's good. Wide angle lens, check. Do we have 1, 2, 3? Here's our 1. The boat is our 2. And then we have a little bit of a 3 right here, which is bright, right? That little tunnel that I see outside. So perfect composition, perfect concept art to showcase the design. Here's another one. Human height is this guy here. This guy's sitting down, so let's use this this guy standing. So perfect. Horizon line is just below him. The horizon line is right about here. Yep, it is. You can see the windowsill is parallel right there. The windowsill is parallel right there. And the top of this piano, the line, this is converging towards it, so the horizon is here. Okay, so that's the horizon line. Check. Okay, so this is a tourist reachable spot in this room. I could physically stand here. I could shoot this camera. The FOV is very wide, judging by the perspective lines here. Okay, very wide angle. So we got rule number 1 check, rule number 2 check. Rule number 3 is foreground, midground, background. Foreground is right there. Subject matter is the entire room, and because interior, we typically use windows, and you will see the windows. That's 3. Okay, so same rule. Here we go again. Shanghai Street, horizon line is right there. There's some humans right in the background here, so that's our human height. Approachable by human. Okay, check number 1. 2, very wide angle lens. Check. You can see it from the buildings. Okay, that's all there. And foreground is this cart here. Train, crash train, our subject, and its environment. So we have a background 3. Okay, so these are 3 examples of using the basic rule that we just covered in this episode to achieve very different results in terms of the subject matter, but the fundamental setup is the same. Okay, now let's look at these. I put these here on purpose. They're also done by our students, but these are not exactly concept art. Okay, these are keyframe illustrations. So they are done, but they're not often done by junior artists. They're done generally by more senior artists. So some of our students like to try these. We don't make our students do too many of these because especially if you're not good at storytelling and good compositional setup, they're pretty hard to do. But the reason why they're not really concept art, they're more illustrative keyframes. They're used for directors and say cinematographers to kind of lock this shot to show what the lighting is, what the composition is. So these shots are actually very, very hard to do if you don't have a good cinematography background and good lighting background. So since we're teaching students to design, we generally don't do this too much. You have a lifetime to learn this because it's actually really hard. And the reason why they're not concept art is because they're not showing anything for 3D artists to build from, right? For example, here's a shot of, I think, Conan, right? Mostly character work here, some character here, but in terms of environment, there's almost nothing here. I cannot give this shot to a 3D artist and tell him to build this because I have no information, but it does work well for keyframes. So this is very beneficial for the lighting people, for directors to see, okay, I get it, this is what my set's gonna feel like. And that is part of our work, but for junior artists, you typically don't get assigned this. This goes to very senior people who do this kind of work, or people who only come from lighting. So for example, at Disney, they have people in the lighting department. That's all they do. They take concept art and make them to keyframes. Okay, so here's another one, right, done by our students. So they do these sometimes. They want to tell a little story. That's fine. If they do a good job on it, we're okay with it. But it's not really concept art because as a concept art, we don't see much of anything, right? This building, we see a little bit of it, but everything else is blocked. So we cannot give this to the next person over to build it as a set because there's no information. Okay, there's a lot of character, they're all posing. So these are not typical concept art to showcase environments or to show a set. They're keyframes. Okay, so if you're new to this industry, you might be a little confused because you see both show up. If you search concept art on Google, you'll see both things show up, but they're actually very, very different in the pre-production pipeline. Okay, keyframes are done for very specific purposes, mostly done to showcase a story, to get the project approved, to show investors what the story is about, to show actors what the mood is like, right? So that's the purpose to serve. This stuff here is for actual production. It's for the production designer to build sets off of. It's for 3D artists to take this and build, 3D or real physical, right? It's for production. This is mostly meant for the people behind the lens to see lighting and all that. So hopefully that makes sense, right? So you can get more information. I'm sure on YouTube, there's a lot of people covering this kind of stuff. So here as well. So there are some costume designs I could use here. But in terms of environmentals, if I take all the characters out, there's nothing here, okay? I guess that's another way to think about it. If you're designing a set, if you take all the characters out, the set should still communicate an idea. If you take the characters out, there's nothing left, then this probably isn't a concept art for environment, right? So in this case, if I remove this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, I pretty much have a very moody set, but I have no information. I have a table and a wall, that's about it. But I have no idea what's going on in here, right? Same in this one. If I take all the characters out, I have a foggy car and a sort of a castle and maybe a mansion in the background, but not much else information. Here, if I take all these characters out, okay, I'm left with pretty much nothing. I have an indication of a bookshelf, and I don't even know what that is, a mirror, right? But as an illustration to tell a story, these works quite well. Then that's what they're meant to do. So for you, if you're watching this video, you gotta figure out what exactly you're trying to do. Okay, if you're doing concept art, to showcase a set, you want to be, my video is getting stuck. Oh, here we go. Okay, you want to be on the left here. If you're doing an illustration for like Magic the Gathering cards, you do this kind of stuff. You're doing marketing art, you're doing keyframes, you tend to go on the right. Okay, so there's a lot of good concept artists who do both. Okay, but for junior artists, we tend to go on the left here because that's the 99.9% of the work they'll be doing when they graduate. Okay, a few more student work. These I don't have to run through too quickly, just to show you the same setup. Okay, let me just draw the horizon line in there so you guys can see. Okay, it's good where the horizon's at. All right, all pretty much human height. This one's slightly below human height. This one, that's a kid, so human height is actually right here on the horizon. If there is a natural environment, by the way, the horizon is really easy to find because it's just the actual horizon of the set, which is right here. Right, so that's the horizon. This is a little kid, so an adult is like maybe that height. Okay, which is right at the horizon. So there's people. If there's people, then it's right on the horizon anyways. So this one's a little bit lower, I think, because we want to showcase the C130 being bigger. Okay, these are all student work, by the way. So a lot of these guys are working on pretty cool projects. I know this guy is working on Baldur's Gate 3 actually. So okay, anyways, 1, 2, 3. Where's the 1, 2, 3? Here's our 1. It's a 2 interior window. 3. Okay, 1 is this chair. 2 is this room. Where's the 3? Right? No window, but we do have this walkway with the light coming through. So that serves as our 3. Here's our 1, which is this table and shelf. Subject is this room here. And 3 is the outside window. Again, interiors, window or something bright. Okay. This is the exterior. So here's our 1. Crash C130 is our 2. Background is our 3. Foreground is this guy. Subject is this throne, and it's interior, so we pretty much have windows, which we do. We also have a ceiling that opens up the shot. That's 3. Last one here, this is exterior. 1 is this plant. 2 are these buildings, and 3 are this background. Okay, you guys, so see the formula: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, a few more student work, and then we'll show you some industry stuff as well, just real quick. Not from our school, right? From just stuff on the internet. But just quickly, let's go through these again. Horizon. So again, this is a classroom environment. We have to repeat, repeat, and repeat. So you can look at your own work and see, okay, do you have these in your own productions? Okay, no human here, but I can pretty much guesstimate where the horizon line is, judging by how big a furniture is, right? If a sofa is this big, then we know that a human is probably about this height, and that's pretty much where it is. This guy is doing some pretty cool AAA games as well. Okay, this is a car, so our horizon line most likely is somewhere around here, which it is. Okay, Marcel's work. This is from 02, 8 years ago, right? Marcel actually spent a long time as an art director on Star Citizen. So this is his work from 8 years ago. Anyways, we have a human, so human is right here. Okay, and this works so well. See, as a tourist shot, because he has a huge mammoth thing here, by placing the camera at human level, it actually makes this thing look huge, which is exactly what we want. If we put the camera up higher, we actually make the elephant feel small. Okay, horizon line, human, that guy's standing, so we'll use his eye. Perfect, goes right through. Detectives, right? So this one, the people are a little bit overposed, but since he did a good job with it, that's okay. But if you take all the characters out, that's still fine. We're selling the environment. Okay, so let's do our 1, 2, 3. 1 here is this. 2 is a throne. Background is our 3. Let's keep repeating. Foreground is this coffee table. The sofa, I guess, could count as a foreground. It's 1. The room itself is our 2. Right, all the set, you can see the samurai swords. Looks like a collector. Looks like an art collector room. Right, it's got all these East Asia collections. And then it's interior, so we have window. That's our 3. Okay, here's our exterior. So foreground is these cars. That's 1. The mansion obviously is our subject, and we have a background, which is 3. Here's the interiors. Interior foreground is this ottoman thing, and also this police officer. That's our scale. 2 is this murder scene and other crazy stuff painted on the walls there. And interior, so therefore we probably have a window, which we do. Number 3. Here's another interior. Foreground is that. This is not a selling point, right? It's just a foreground element. So this bar is our selling point. That's our 2, and it's interior, so we have a 3. Okay, that's a window right there. So here's the exterior. So 1 could be these little rats. Okay, rats is human scale, meaning that we know how big a rat is. Remember, plant, rock, human, as long as you recognize how big it is, it works as a foreground. So little rats works. Okay, here's a couple little rats as well. So that's our 1. Okay, this little shack right here could be our 1 as well. 2 obviously is our mammoth thing, and then exterior, so we have background 1, 2, 3. Okay, so those are our students' work. Let me just show you quickly some stuff from the internet for professional work. Okay, so I'm not sure which artist did these, so it's hard for me to credit them because a lot of these work, they don't have artist name on them, but they're from various AAA projects. Just to show you the same formula is all there. Okay, these 2 here are from Witcher, okay, CD Projekt's game there. So here is an environment shot, horizon line right there. Why is it right there? Because human height. Okay, you can see the chair. So if someone stands up, this is the horizon. Okay, they don't even have a human here, not needed. Because again, we recognize how big something is. You don't need a human for scale. You just need scalable objects. So chairs, sofas, tables, these gives our human scale. So no need to put a human, but horizon is at the correct position. It is at human eye level. Okay, we're not above it, we're not below it. Perfect. So that's satisfied. Very wide angle lens, check. Okay, number 3 is our foreground. He has a candle as well as this walkway. That could be our 1. Okay, the room itself obviously is a 2, and since it's the interior, we have windows, and we do, and that's our 3. And those windows are always bright. Okay, same formula. Okay, done by professionals that are out there. Here's another piece of concept art from Witcher. This time he has a person standing here, but just standing, no posing. Okay, so that's our horizon going right across. Wide angle lens, check. Number 3, which is our composition. Foreground are these buckets. This kitchen room is number 2, and since interior we need a window, so that is our window number 3. Okay, here's Assassin's Creed concept art from the Egypt version, right? So same formula being applied. So this is not a tourist shot, right? A tourist can't get up here, but since we're taking the view of our assassin, they could climb up here. So in a way, this sort of breaks the tourist shot. However, if we take it from the view at if you are a assassin tourist, you could get up here. So in this case, they're doing a AAA game, so they could break the rule a little bit here, but the rule still applies, which is still human height. The horizon is from his view. You see, the horizon line is up here. Okay, it's from his view. So the vanishing points go up to this. Okay, they don't go up to here. So that's the true horizon. So the rules still apply. Very wide angle lens. That's rule number 2. Rule number 3 is our 1, 2, 3, right? So foreground. So we're not selling him. That's not the selling point of this drawing. The selling point is what's here. Okay, that's 2. And then that's 3. Okay, so same formula. Okay, so this setup is actually just reverse of these ones that are low on the floor. You can see, I'll show you guys later with a demo. Okay, here's another Assassin's Creed shot. So we got human beings. So therefore the horizon line is somewhere right over. This one's actually, let me see here. He put it a little bit lower. This camera is actually lower than humans, which is fine. Remember we said that it could be human height and below, right? You got about 5 positions: chest, waist, thigh, ankle, right? So this camera looks like it's about here somewhere close to about here, maybe even lower, I think here. So this camera is at human thigh height, okay, which is fine. It's within our formula. Very wide angle lens, check. Subject matter, which is this building. So this street, the reason why we're a subject here is because these buildings now are on the very right side of the street. So we're not shooting down the middle. So these buildings now become our subject matter, and this guy here as well. So that's rule number 2 applied. Number 3 is foreground, midground, background. So 1, 2, this is also 2, and we have 3. Okay. So here's Mass Effect, very old game here now already. So but same rule. So no human beings, not needed. Even though this one could probably use a human, because for sci-fi things, it's hard to tell how big something is. But we do have a door. So a door generally gives an average. So if it's a door, a human's probably maybe this high. So judging that, let's try to see. Let's put a horizon right across that. And that's pretty close. You can see that horizon line is pretty much exactly where it is in perspective, right? So rule number 1 is applied. Rule number 2, which is high FOV. Yep, very high FOV, right? Wide lens. Rule number 3, foreground, midground, background. So foreground is this pillar right here. Midground obviously is the room itself, and it's interior, so we need a window. So even a space station, we have 3, which is looking out with the window. Okay. You guys have seen the formula here, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you know, wide angle lens, horizon line, right? It's the same formula, okay? Of course, you could find different things, okay? I'm sure someone's watching and go, but I saw this concept, but it doesn't follow this. Yes, you don't need to follow this. This is for students to have a basic stepping step. It's the stepping stone. It's the first step to make sure what you put on paper looks professional. As you get more pro, you could do whatever you want, okay? But as a student, if you let students do whatever they want, for teachers, we generally see all sorts of junk, okay? That's very hard to critique. So follow the formula. Look at this. These are professionals and they're following the same formula, okay? Here's Coco, okay? Animation, but it's environment design, okay? So we do have little Coco doing a pose, but even if little Coco is not in here, this shot still works. That's environment design. You could give this 3D modeler and model this. Same formula. Human height. So in this case, we put it at Coco height, okay? There's a very small space, so the cameraman is basically at the same level as Coco. Okay, so we're gonna put it right there. So rule number 1 applied. Rule number 2, wide angle lens. Of course, look at the floorboards. That gives you the very perfect camera calculations. All right, so this is a very wide angle lens to be able to fit all the stuff inside the camera. Okay, if this is a 50 mil, like a human eye, it's pretty much like this. This is pretty much what a human will see at 50 mil. So it's too claustrophobic. We're not getting enough of the environment, so we've got to zoom out, 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 like that. Okay, so put the horizon back in. So let's do the 1, 2, 3. Foreground, which is human scale. We have the sewing machine. That's our 1. Okay, the rest of this room is our 2. Okay, now where's the 3? Okay, this is quite a cool little thing to analyze where 3 is. 3 is our background, right? So they want to make a very kind of a secret spot for Coco, right? This is a little hiding spot. Remember in the movie, he's not supposed to play music, right? It's banned in the family. So this has to be secretive. So we cannot leak too much stuff out. But the artists here, the designer here, still have rule number 3 applied. And they're very subtle, but they're here. Okay, you can see right there, the cracks in the floor, in the wall boards, allows us to have that breathing room of the outside. That's one way to do number 3. Okay, so we have the breathing room in these cracks to show that there's an outside. But we could also say that the television is acting sort of like a window. It's the brightest spot in here, just like, let's look over here. See this interior right here? The brightest white is right there, right? Because it is an interior, and look over here. The brightest light in here are the windows again, okay? Because there are number 3, right? So in Coco, in this sense, the brightest light is also this, but it's a TV. So it's acting as our number 3. So it satisfies our 1, 2, 3 rule, okay? And lastly, we have this, man, this episode is gonna go for pretty long, but it's okay. Who cares, right? We gotta learn. Okay, so this is a concept art for Disneyland Star Wars, right? So the horizon line is down here. They put this horizon actually at R2-D2 level, which is pretty cool, right? So this guy, the horizon is actually somewhere right here. So that's our achievable camera. Tourists can shoot this shot. In fact, I believe they designed this set to be exactly what tourists want to see. So you're probably coming up some stairs or something, and you see this beautiful shot. So we have our wide angle lens, check. Right, this is a very, very wide angle lens, actually, right, super wide lens. And we have our 1, which is our gibberish stuff over here. R2-D2 is a 1 as well. 2, obviously, is our Millennium Falcon. That's a selling point. These things back here are also 2s, the cliffs, right? And number 3, of course, is our background. So this, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different projects, complete different things, video games to animations to a theme park, but the formula underneath the setup is all the same, okay? So hopefully you're watching this and start to understand why it is so important to know the fundamentals. So when you do your own work, you at least start from here, okay? And that pretty much summarizes what we're going to talk about. Here just some film stills just to reinforce that. Just kind of comparing differences between the film shot. Okay, here's Lord of the Rings as a film shot. Here's a bridge. They also have 1, 2, 3, by the way, right? Here's 1, 2. Waterfall is taking place of our background to be bright, right? Brightest thing is number 3. So here, 1, right? Tourist shot is doable. The cameraman can stand on this cliff. The horizon's where this rider is at. Okay, 1, subject matter is here, and brightest thing in the room or outside is 3. Okay, here's another one. So Frodo here is our horizon line. Tourist shot, we're standing on a balcony. Similar to that cathedral shot that we saw before. Here is also our 1. The building is our 2. Brightest thing is our number 3. Here's on Blade Runner 2049. Horizon is his eye level, right? We're actually slightly below. The cameraman's right about here, slightly below, which is fine. We have our element 1, selling point 2, 3. This character is not a selling point, actually the environment is. But notice the camera for films are generally a little bit more punched in. Their FOV is not as wide as concept art, because we talked about this. We have a series of shots to make this environment work. So we don't need a single shot to do everything. But in concept art, I actually found the concept art for 2049. You can see the shot is a lot wider. Okay, horizon line, much wider FOV. Okay, but same thing, 1, 2, 3. So in the actual shot here that Roger Deakins actually shot here, they actually locked it into about here. Okay, about maybe a 50. This looks like about, I don't know what lens this is. I'm guessing 50 mil, maybe something like that, maybe 35, not too sure, but it's pretty punched in compared to the concept art, right? So here's an illustration of the same set from Lord of the Rings, and you can see as a concept art or illustration, you have a lot more wider lens. You could fit everything. So you have the mountains, the thing, even the little bridges right here, right? But whereas the camera does not do that, right? So, but this formula is still the same, all right? So let's just do a quick review before we end this episode here with the checklist. So we encourage our students to print this out and just put it in front of the wall. As you do these environment compositions, check this list off, which I've repeated about 50 times by now, right? So first one, is your camera in a reachable location if you're a tourist? And is it at human eye level? Check. Okay, number 2, is your lens wide enough to fit the subject matter to get some nice perspective in there so it's not a flat side view drawing and really basic drawing? Do you have that? Okay, check. Okay, wide. Number 3, do you have foreground, which is scale reference, like human being or plants? Do you have a subject matter in your midground? And do you have a background? If it's exterior, it's obviously the background, sky, trees, mountains. If you're interior, most likely it's a window and it's bright, lights are coming through it. Okay, check 1, 2, 3, check. If you have these 3, continue doing your design. If you're missing one of these, fix it first. And that's what we tell our students to do. If you show a homework that's missing one of these elements, there's something already wrong with your fundamentals. Doesn't matter, whatever design you're putting underneath, fix this first and then focus your time on all the designs, okay? So produce some nice work with this first before experimenting with other things, other designs. That's really important. Get the fundamentals down, okay? And I'll just show quickly some of the grids I use. So you can see here, these are the grids I've used to do a lot of my drawings. And the reason why I use it is because horizon's in the shot, wide angle lens, and I can put whatever subject matter I want in there. Okay, see? So the ones on the left, on the right are the exactly same thing. They're just flipped, right? So for one grid setup, for example, this one here, okay, if I just flip it and flip it again, you can see it's the same grid, right? They're exactly the same thing. So this angle here is pretty much the same setup, except I'm just looking down a little bit, but the horizon setup and the foreground, background is all the same, okay? So that's that. And then with these, I could then do a series of sketches. These are all sketches I've done for our students in the past. You can see all different subject matters, but all the same setup. Okay, we'll do this one last time and we'll end this episode. Okay, let's just draw the horizon line. This one's a reverse, horizon's there. This one, the horizon's there. So I'll share with you my formula. Every designer, just like photographers, have their preferred setup that they default to. Okay. And what I default to is pretty much these. Okay. And you'll see it as I mark these. Okay, these are all the horizon line positions. There's too many here, so let's just do a few. Let's not mark all of them. But you're starting to see the position I have to use. Notice I have to put all my horizon about a quarter up from the bottom of the frame. Right? Look at that. They're all about here. This one's the same, except just reversed. It's a quarter from top of frame. Bottom frame, bottom frame, bottom frame, right? So I like to put my camera at quarter up from bottom of frame. That's where my horizon line is. That's where my camera. So my camera is generally a little bit lower than humans. I put about crotch height, thigh height, somewhere around there. So it makes the environment feel a little bit bigger, a little bit grander. That's my personal preference. And then most of my shots have a vanishing point directly in them. So here's a vanishing point right there, and one that's off the page. Here the vanishing point is right there. These two are exactly the same camera. Vanishing point right here, vanishing point right there, vanishing point right there actually. But this one's an even lower horizon. This one, the horizon is really low. It's here. Let me erase that. This one almost on the floor. Okay, vanishing point there, vanishing point there, vanishing point. This one is there. Vanishing point. Oh, this one's a little bit higher horizon actually, but it's there. Okay, so this is a formula I have to use for almost all my work. Okay, quarter up from the page, put your vanishing point, which is your horizon line, put your eye level there, and then put a high FOV, and then the rest of it is your design. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, they're all there. Okay, just randomly. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. Okay, by now I don't have to repeat that anymore. All right, so this is a pretty long episode, but I think this is a very important one, especially those who want to get into environmental concept art design. Showcase this in the best way possible. This formula, you could use this forever. Okay, you could do this for the next 50 years and it'll still work. And once you start to notice this formula, the next time you watch movies, you'll see it everywhere. There's 1, 2, 3 and YFOV, you'll see it all over the place because it's time tested. This works well to communicate a design. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I definitely enjoyed making it, and I'll try to get 105 out one of these days as well. Take advantage of this, everyone's working at home and working from the office and so forth. So it gives me a little quiet time as well, because our staff is also working from home. So anyways, hope you guys enjoy episode 104. Leave all your questions below and we'll try to get to those. I'll try to do a Q&A, by the way, one of these days, maybe for episode, who knows, some Q&A. All right, guys. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in episode 105. This is Feng Zhu signing off. Bye-bye.